It'll be at a good spot. Okay, today we're going to start at Hatemed, which is on Daf Chaf Heyamid Beis. You follow? You see that? 25b, Hatemed, it's in the Mishnah.
Yeah.
Okay, we thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. This list of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. Okay, let's see. This Hatemed is a tough sugya because there's different girsayis and the Gemara Makkas, and we're quoting it, and different ways of going through it. But anyway, Hatemed, the Mishnahs before this, we're discussing the what's mutually exclusive. What applies to this doesn't apply to that. What applies to that doesn't apply to this. That's what we were, starting with the way Malika is done. That's not the way Shechita is done. And then we went to the different birds. What's kosher for this? There's not kosher for that. The last thing we did was the bitter almonds and the sweet almonds. If this is chayiv and meiser, so then that's not chayiv. Then it's mutually exclusive. Now, Rashi points out that temed is not talking about two things. It's talking about the same thing, but there's two stages. So it's similar, but there's a slight distinction between this Mishnah and the previous Mishnah. It says temed actually hichmetain nikach because of meiser peiselas and mikvah. Temed is this water that you soak it in the I don't know if it's called dregs in the peels and the pits and all of the pieces that was used to squeeze the wine, to squeeze the grapes, so everything that's left. You now take water and you soak it in. You soak these things in water. So you already got the juice out. Now you're doing it a second time, and you're getting the flavor into this water. It's called temed. Now, if it would increase the amount of liquid afterwards, in other words, you put in 4 cups and you have 5 cups at the end because more liquid came out, then for sure it's going to be considered wine. Question is when it's the same. It comes out, you put in the 4 cups, you get out 4 cups. At what stage is it considered wine? Now, what's the difference if it's wine? Well, 2 things that the Mishnah is talking about. One thing is that can you use Meiser Sheni money to buy it? Because Meiser Sheni is only you can only buy fruits. You can't buy water with Meiser Sheni. So if it's considered wine, then Meiser Sheni could be used to purchase it. Meiser Sheni is the money that was redeemed from the fruits, from the grain that you grew. You redeem that and you put it on the money. You go to Yerushalayim and you buy edibles. So can you buy this type of wine? It's more like a wine punch. It's like this water that's this temed. So the first thing is actually hichmetz. Before what's it called? I don't want to say hichmetz as in vinegar. It means ferments. Before it ferments, because of meiser. It's not considered. It's not fermented. It's not considered a fruit, and you can't use the meiser money to buy it. Now, there's another problem. Second thing is that if it's water and you pour 3 lugim of mayim shuvim into a mikveh, it would possible. If it's wine, if the mikveh doesn't have 40 so, it would become possible. If it's wine, it won't become possible. But if it's water, then it will become possible. So if it didn't ferment yet, it's going to possible the mikveh. Okay, now, once it ferments, then nikach because of meiser ve'ena paiselas mikveh. Then it's already a fruit. You can use the meiser money and it will pass the mikveh. Okay, now it's a brand new piece of Gemara here, a new case in the Mishnah, and this is relevant to two halachas. Everyone had to give machzis a shekel every year. When you give the machzis a shekel, the half a coin, you had to add 1 piece. You had to add what's called a kalbain, a little bit more. It's when you give a tzedakah, they say, do you want to cover the credit card fee or something? It's something like that. So you have to give this kalbain. Now, if you're giving for yourself, you have to give a kalbain. If you're paying for someone else, you don't have to give a kalbain. That's the rule. If 2 people are using 1 coin, but they're each buying it, they're giving together, then they each have to give a kalbain. But if you're giving for someone else, entirely for someone else, then you don't have to give a kalban. Another thing is that partners, shutfim, don't need to take meiser from their animals. If you have a flock of animals, you have to give the 10th one is considered as meiser, as a karban, meiser behema. If you own that flock, which part in a partnership, then you don't have to take meiser. We learn it from a pasuk. Pasuk says, Yelacha, palatial shutfis. Okay. Pasuk says Yelacha. So it goes like this. It's possible that there's two brothers that are partners because they became partners. It's also possible that they're partners because they own the estate. They own the estate means that it really is in their father's. It's really their father's name. It turns out that they're the owners of that, but it's still, they never divided it up. So it says, Ha'achen, Hashutfim, Kishachayovim bekalbain. If they have to pay a kalbain, which means that they already divided up their father's inheritance, they divided up the estate, and they said, you know what, let's put everything back in the same pot. We'll rejoin as partners. And then if they're partners, they do have to pay a kalbain. Then Peturim in Meiser Behema, but if they're partners, then they don't have to take Meiser, because as we said, that a flock that's owned by partners, doesn't require to take Meiser. It's excluded from the pasuk. Kishachayavim b'Meiser Behema, the opposite. If it's still in the estate, the Tfusas Abayas, Yitzis clients to deal with this. So if it's in the Mazel Tov Yitzi, by the way. A granddaughter. And so if it's in the estate, if it's still in the estate, then you don't have to take you do have to take meiser, because it's considered like the father owns it. Now, the father's not here, but it's considered like it's owned by an individual, which is the father. It's the estate. However, if that's the case, then when you take the meiser, you take the machzas shekel from the estate to pay for the children's the brothers' machzas shekel, it's as if the father's paying for it, and when you pay for someone else, then you don't have to take, you don't have to pay the extra kalbain. So here you have, depending on the way it's categorized, is it categorized as partners or as an individual owner, then this halacha will apply, or if not, then that halacha will apply. Umar says, Mani Masnisa, I'm going to have to stop, just take a pause in about 4 minutes. I'm going to have to run just to do an attendance because the other teacher's not here, and then I'll come back. Mani Masnisin was the author of our Mishnah. Lei Rabbi Yehuda v'lei Rabbanan. It's not Rabbi Yehuda, not Rabbanan. It's Machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan if you go Basar Chazusa. If you go after the way it looks. If it looks like wine, and it tastes like wine, then it is wine. It smells like wine. So, but Rabbi Yehuda says you go Basar, the looks is the main thing. So anyway, the Rabbanan don't say that. The Tanya was started in the rice. I'm a Tamid. Someone that makes this type of wine by soaking the peels and pits and pieces in water. But nasan mayim b'mida, put in a certain amount. And he found exactly the same amount afterwards. Well, he's pater from taking meiser because chumas and meisers, because it's just water. It's maybe flavored water, but it's water. It's not considered wine. And you don't take meiser on water. Rabbi Yehuda mechayev. Rabbi Yehuda says no. It's chayev. Now we didn't categorize here. Did it ferment? Did it not ferment? We don't know anything. What's going on? But the Gemara says mani. Who could our Mishnah be? Now, Rabbanan, if our Mishnah would be the Rabbanan, our Mishnah categorized everything by fermentation. If it fermented, it's wine. If it didn't ferment, it's not wine. Rabbanan, if we would say it's the opinion of the Rabbanan, they say that you're always pater. Afgav the hichmetz, even if it fermented. Because why? Because you found the same amount. There's no extra there's no extra grape juice in it. The wine. Rabbi Yehuda, afgav leichmetz. Rabbi Yehuda says you don't even need it to ferment. So why don't our Mishnah gives us determining factor, which the Brisa doesn't have any mention of it. So obviously our Mishnah doesn't fit with either of them. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua. Rav Nachman says in the name of his father-in-law. It's very common for Rav Nachman to do that. Rabba bar Avua. It's the family of the Reish Galusa. B'shehichmitz machlekes. That no, you're missing one major point of that Brisa. The Brisa that says that there's a machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan is talking about when it fermented. That according to the Rabbanan, even if it fermented, it's considered water. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, if it fermented, it's considered wine. Umasnis and Rabbi Yehuda. And our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. Easy. Our Mishnah says if it ferments. Well, that's Rabbi Yehuda exactly. That says if it ferments, it's considered wine. V'chein Rabbi Yisrael bar Chanina, Rabbi Yisrael bar Chanina in Eretz Yisrael. Rab Nachman is in Bavel. Rabbi Yisrael bar Chanina is in Eretz Yisrael. Is a generation later, I think, than Rabbi Yochanan. B'sheichmitz machlekes. That the machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanayak machlekes, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan, is b'sheichmitz. Bam Rab Nachman, Amar Rab. Okay, now we're gonna have another statement from Rab Nachman. It's gonna throw us off. Let me pause. I'll pause the recording and I'll be back shortly. I'm sorry I have to do this. Let me see if I can come back earlier. I will, but it might take me 10 minutes. It might take me less. I don't know. That's not it. Let me pause this 1 second. Okay, so now we have another statement from Rav Nachman. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua. Another statement that's going to throw us off. It says, Temed shalakhu bekesef meiser, lebesay fichmetz kana meiser. Here we're talking about someone bought temed. He bought this water that's flavored by the peels. And he used meiser money. Now, the rule with meiser money is that if it was eligible to be purchased by the meiser, then the kedusha of the kedusha was on the grain. Got transferred over to the money. Now it gets transferred over to what you're purchasing, but only if it's eligible to be purchased with meisim. If it's not eligible, then when you did that sale and you took the money and you gave it to the storekeeper, the storekeeper now can use the money. If it was eligible, the storekeeper can use the money for whatever mundane things. But if it wasn't an eligible sale, it wasn't eligible for meiser to be used, then what you bought is mundane, and the money remains holy. So when it says over here that temet shalachah b'kesef meiser b'seif ichmetz kana meiser, later on it didn't ferment when you bought it. When you bought it, it was water. Later on, it fermented, and nevertheless, the meiser money is acquired. It acquires the meiser money. It means that the kedusha of the meiser sheni goes on to the water with the temed, and the money goes free. So my timer, what's the reason for that? It retroactively tells us the peru that it was really a fruit. Now this is going to throw us off. This is going to be a huge problem. It's going to mess up the understanding of our Mishnah. Where it says, so what's happening here is that if let's see, if we're going to look at this as retroactive, that obviously means that the way retroactive would work is that if I look at these, what's called chartzanim, as the peels or the pits or whatever it is, and we had it in the parsha, with the nazir. If I look at these items, this waste product of the grape, is it considered fruit or is it not considered fruit? Well, that I'll be able to tell later on if it ferments. So if it fermented later, that means that there really was the fruit was in here, and there really was it was considered peru. So the problem is that our Mishnah didn't mention anything about this. Our Mishnah said clearly that if it fermented, then it's considered a fruit. If it didn't ferment, it's not considered fruit. Problem is, 1 second. Dilma ishavke have a machmetz. 1 second. According to Rabbi bar Avua, Rab Nachman, name of Rabbi bar Avua, even if it's not a fruit right now, if it didn't ferment now, but because later on it's going to ferment, that means it's already a fruit now. It's going to mess up the whole Mishnah. The Mishnah gave us a criteria that Rab Nachman Amar Rabbi Avua just messes up with telling me that we'll be able to tell later on, retroactively. Throw a wrench into the whole thing. Yeah. They have the shaila now about yibum. If someone passes away, then the brother needs to do yibum, but that's only because he didn't have any children. But today they could take the zera. Let's say he passed away in an accident. They could take the zera from the body, make the wife pregnant. If the child is considered a child from the father, then he does have children. messes up the whole yibum, and they can do this years later. So yeah. Anyway, if things work like this, everything that we know falls off. Here we're saying just a very simple thing. If it's going to ferment down the road, then it messes up what we did before. We were saying that the mikveh is not puzzle. We were saying why, because it was. We were saying that the mikveh is puzzle. The mikveh is not puzzle. It was going to ferment in 3 weeks. So Amar Rabbah says that the case of the Mishnah, you're right, it really could work like that. However, the case of the Mishnah is kashir mimena b'kais v'leichmetz. I know I threw it into the mikveh, and I'm saying that it's the mikveh's puzzle. Why is that? That's because I left a little bit that in a cup that didn't ferment. So I see that test amount tells me about everything else, and then the same thing with the meiser. I thought that it was water, and I couldn't use meiser for it. I could not use, but what's the reason for that? Is because I left the test amount, and that test amount tells me that it didn't ferment. Rav Amar. Rava says, what's Rava doing here? Rava could be explaining the Mishnah, not the way that Rabbah just did, that we have a test amount. That test amount is telling me that it doesn't ferment. Rava says, Hamani Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri. This is really the opinion of Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri. The Tanan. I mentioned before that Rabbi Yehuda is the one that holds that follows Chazusa. Might have been making a mistake. Let's see over here. The Tanan was taught in the Mishnah. Gimel lugamayim chaser kurtev shenafel teichan kurtev yayin. There's a shaila in the Girsa here how to learn this, but there's 2 ways actually in the Gemara Makkas. The Mishnah says that if you have 3 lugin, a certain measurement of drawn water that's missing just a little bit. It's not perfectly full to the top, this 3 lugin. And that drop was filled up by wine. So now it is full, but it's not all water. There's a little bit of wine that's mixed in. Now, wine is very, very red, very like purpley, and it could make even though it's just a drop, could make all that liquid into wine. The whole thing looks like wine. It doesn't look like water anymore. So v'nafla mikveh, and now it fell into a mikveh. Now you don't have enough. You don't have enough water to passel the mikveh because it's not shleish lugim. And the color doesn't look like water either. It says lay plus lua. The mikveh is still kosher. Kimul lugim mayim chaser kurtiv shnafel techen kurtiv chalav umarim kemarim v'nafla mikveh lay plus lua. The same thing could apply if you have milk that got mixed in. Now the milk doesn't look like anything else. When milk mixes with water, it's just going to be water. A little cloudy, but it's going to look like water. So we're going to say it's water. And now it falls into the mikveh. Here you could have thought really that it should passel the mikveh because it's just water, but it's really not, because there's a little bit of chalav. It's not really water; it's milk. So then the mikveh doesn't become passel. Now there's a question: if the first quick case of our Mishnah had to be where it was chaser kortev, or even if it was not chaser kortev, it could be that the first case of our Mishnah, that we just quoted, is that you have actually a full 3 lugim of mayim shuvim, and wine fell into it, and it doesn't look like water; it looks like wine. So that's not going to pass the mikveh because the color changes it, because it doesn't look like it, so it's not it. That's a possibility. But anyway, let's leave that. Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri says, no, everything goes after the color. Everything goes after the color, the way it looks. Okay, now Rava concludes. Says, La Avam Rabbi Yechanan. Chazu says, he says, does Rabbi Yechanan not say that we're going to follow Chazusa? So Chanami, over here also what we can do is, Zilbasa chazusa, b'taima v'chazusa, dahai maya ninu. What we're going to say is that how is it that our Mishnah says that you look after the fermentation? Did it ferment? Did it not ferment? We don't go after what happens later. That's because our Mishnah is following Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. So what would Rabba bar Avua be doing? He would be following the Rabbanan that says that no, later on things could change. So it's based on a machlekes. So if I would follow, it says Rab Nachman that says that you can look at what's going to happen in the end, even though right now it looks like water, because he goes like the Tanakama that he doesn't care what it looks like. Tanakama doesn't go after chazusa. Right now it looks like water, so he doesn't care. However, Rava is going to go like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Okay. And so therefore, it matters just what Rava, which is explaining our Mishnah, is going to go like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Now the Gemara says that this explanation, that the machlokes, going back on Rab Nachman, the very first way we introduced this our Mishnah that says that did the water ferment? Did this water wine ferment? Then it's considered wine, and if it didn't ferment, then it's considered water. That was the way we explain the machlekes of the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda according to Rab Nachman. Nachman says that there's a machlekes Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda. If you get out the same amount of water that you put in, we're talking about that you put the water into these pieces and peels of the grapes, and what you take out is the same amount. Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's considered wine, and the Rabbanan hold that it's considered water. So came along Rab Nachman and said that's when it fermented, and Rabbi Yehuda says it's wine. If it didn't ferment, then no one would say that it's considered wine. However, pligi the Rabbi Lazar, this argues on Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar here is Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas. He's the student of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Lazar says, "Hakol moedim she'im mafrishin alav mimakam acher elm kein hichmetz." Says there's a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Are you allowed to? Are you chayiv and meiser for this water that the peels of the wine soaked in it, peels of the grapes soaked in it? You have to take meiser off this. So the Rabbi Yehuda says yes. The Rabbanan say no. So Rabbi Lazar says that everyone would agree, which means even Rabbi Yehuda would agree, that even though you have to take meiser off it, but you can't take meiser from something else off this. You can't take meiser from something else for this wine. Why? Because this may be pater. Another thing is chayev, and you can't take meiser from something that's chayev for something that's pater, or the opposite. You can't take something that's pater on something that's chayev. In other words, it has to be all internal. If you want to take meiser for this, you have to take it from it itself. We'll say if it's chayev, then good. If not, then not. But you can't mess up other products based on this possibly is chayev, this is possibly not chayev. It says unless it was, which means if everyone agrees that you can't take from other produce on this water or water wine, it's on this temed. So then that would mean that where is the machlekes? Must mean when it's not leihechmetz. Yeah. Because if once it's hechmetz, then you can take them somewhere else. Right? If it's leihechmetz, then you can't take from someone else. But you still have to take. That means that Rabbi Yehuda holds you still have to take meiser, even by leihechmetz, which means that it's not the same as Rab Nachman. Rab Nachman said the whole machlekes Rabbi Yehuda was only after hechmetz. Here we're seeing from Rabbi Lazar, hichmetz means ferments. Only after it ferments. Here we're seeing from Rabbi Lazar that there was a machlekes even before it ferments. Kasavar b'lei hichmetz machlekes. He must hold that before it's hichmetz, before it ferments, you still have a machlekes between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda if it's considered wine. And you have to take meiser internally. But Rabbi Yehuda only said they have to take meiser minei from it itself, the internally take meiser. Av me'al malay, but you can't take from someone else. Maybe you're going to take from something that's really chayiv, and this is really pater. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda would only say that this is a suffix, and so you can't mess up anything else taking meiser based on this, which is a suffix. Okay, we just wanted to say that although Reb Nachman explained the Mishnah one way, Reb Elazar disagrees. He explains it differently. Tan Rabbanan. Starting a brisa, temen actually hichmitz. This water, before it ferments, mashika b'mayim, you see, is very interesting. What happens if something becomes tummy? Well, no problem, put it in the mikveh. What happens if it's a food? You can't put food in the mikveh. It's a problem. There's nothing you can do. It's tummy. What happens if it's water? So water, what you can do is you can cause hashaka. You can put it in the ground and allow the water of a mikveh to kiss this water, and it all becomes as if it's all one mikveh. And then you can take this out. So if it's water, achlei hichmitz mashiki b'mayim, you can purify this water by allowing it to kiss the water of a mikveh, and it becomes all mikveh, all mikveh. However, mishe hichmitz, once it becomes wine, once it ferments, in mashiki b'mayim, then there's no way of purifying this. It becomes tummy. It's tummy. Because you can't just make a mikveh, wine mikveh. It has to be water. So when there's a water, that's before it ferments. After it ferments, then it's not. We're talking about that you soak the peels of the wine of the grapes inside the what's it called? You soak the peels of the grapes in the water. Okay. Amar Rava. When do we say that you can do this hashaka? That's when you use pure water and the water became tummy. But if it was tummy, if the water was tummy originally, then you can't purify it. We're going to ask a question on this, so don't jump yet. Also, Rav Gvia mi Beik Sil. Rav Gvia from Beik Sil, that's a place. Amla Shmaita Kameda Ravashi. He goes and he says over what Rabba says to Ravashi. Rava didn't see Ravashi, I think it says. Kishemes Rava Nailad Ravashi, I think it says. So he said over the statement to Ravashi. It says, one second, why not? Damninan Aidi Demaya Yakiri Shechni Tatoi Upeira Kafi Milael Volay Kasalkala Shakalamaya Yachi Tahirim Ulabasayf Nitunami Alam Mavalvali Haknam Mavalvali. He has a question. He says, why would you say that if the water was tamei, then it won't you can't do hashaka. It was originally. Apparently we won't say that the water is going to go to the bottom. And where are we going to have the water's kiss? On the top. We're going to say that the fruit floats to the top and the water goes to the bottom. So therefore it's not going to work. So one second. So who cares if it was tummy first or tar first? If that's a problem, the same thing is going to apply. So it must be that it's mevalvel, that all the water is mixed with the wine. And nevertheless, we're going to say that if it's fermented, yes, if not, not. So then who cares? Who cares if the water was tummy first, if the water wasn't tummy first? It doesn't matter. If it became tummy later, it doesn't matter. If hashaka works, hashaka works. Yeah, they had this discussion with the Rebbe Rashab's mikveh. The theory of the Rebbe Rashab's mikveh was that the water on the bottom would be colder, and the water on the top. So you have two. The way the Rebbe Rashab wanted the mikveh to be was that the bottom bar should be the rainwater, and then the city water you would be on the top, and you do hashaka. You would make a hole on the bottom so that the waters touch. Now, traditionally, the mikveh had a hole on the side. And you had on one side, you had one bar that had the rainwater, which is usually dirty. It sat there for a long time. And then you had the city water, which was filtered and heated, and everything else was on the side. And the waters would touch, and you would see like a difference you would put your hand through, you would feel a difference in temperature and over there. I mean, the water on another wall on the other side was dirty. Rebbe Shab did it on the bottom. He put the bar on the bottom and he makes a hole. And the same thing, hashaka, the waters touch and it becomes like this. Now, the theory was, why is this better? It says because the hot water is going to stay on the top The cold water, which is in the ground, is going to stay on the bottom. And even if people coming in and swishing around, the waters aren't going to mix because the temperatures are going to hold them different. If just by sitting, not by swishing around, you can push everything around, but by sitting, it's not going to mix. Then they did tests, and they found that the minerals that come from the city water, the minerals that are in the city water, which are on the top, they found them on the bottom. They did a test, which means obviously that it's mixing. Then after research, they realized that just because you find the minerals on the bottom, that doesn't mean that the water's mixed. It could be the minerals are heavy and they fell out of the water and they fell into the thing. It doesn't mean that it's mixed. And the same thing could be if you would we could do a test with food coloring. You take a cup of hot water, you put a paper on top, you turn it over, and there's a cup of cold water on the bottom. You put blue ink on the top, let's say, and then you pull it out, and the water's there mixing. And then you start to see the bottom getting blue. You say the Rebbe Rashab's theory doesn't work. The different temperatures are not holding it separate. There's no the water's separate. It's the ink that's in the water that's mixing. You don't know that the waters are really. I mean, it's hard to know that. Okay. Here we're saying in our Gemara that the waters are mixing, that the water and the wine is mixing. So it's always going to connect. Either if it's water, then it's water. It's going to connect. If it's wine, then it's not going to connect. It's not going to be considered a shak. The next Gemara, kol makom sheish mecher in knas, kol makom sheish. The next Mishnah, kol makom sheish mecher in knas, kol makom sheish knas in mecher, goes like this: that if a young girl, the father can sell her as a maidservant. However, a young girl, if she is raped, then there's a certain knas that has to be paid to the father, 50 coins. Now, that's only if she's a naira. That's only if she's 12. When she's a young girl, that fine doesn't apply. So the Mishnah says, when you're able to sell her when she's under 12, then there's no knas. Once there's a knas, she's over 12, then ain't mecha, then you can't sell her anymore. Because over 12, a young girl can't be sold as a maidservant. Rav Yehuda Marav, the most common 5 words in Shas. Rav Yehuda says the name of Rav. That's usually after a Mishnah, usually have a Rav Yehuda Marav. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, it's Rav Yehuda, Rav Yehuda, the name of Rav. He says, Zu Divri Rav Meir. The Mishnah that we just said is one opinion. Chacham say it's not true. It's possible to be able to have a knas even if you can still sell the girl into as a maid. The Tanya was taught in a brayso. A young girl from 1 day old until she has 2 pubic hairs, till she reaches maturity. Yesh la mecher. She could be sold as a slave, ein la knas, but she doesn't have that penalty if someone rapes her, that fine, to pay those 50 coins to the father. But mishatavi beisare such a tibager from the two pubic hairs until bagrus, until 6 months later, until she reaches that type of maturity. There's 2 levels of maturity. There's a naira and then a begeris. 6 months later, then yesh la knas vein la mecher divra meir. Then she has a knas. Then if she's raped, then there is that penalty on the rapist, and the father can't sell her anymore because she's already over 12, which means she has the two pubic hairs. It says mutually exclusive. When this applies, that doesn't apply, and that applies, and this doesn't apply. The Chachamim say no. There is a little bit of an overlap. It says the knas goes not until naira. The knas goes until bagrus, 6 months after she's a naira. Knas in. The Gemara says, Knas in mechaloi? What do you mean, only Knas? You can't sell her during that time? It says, ma'af Knas b'makam mecha. No, there's also Knas, which means even though you can, basically, she can be sold until um, basically the Chachamim say that from 3 years old, from 3 years old, where she's eligible, where she's fit for relations already. So then there's a knas. Of course, there's a knas. That's obvious. No, I'm sorry, that's not obvious. Usually, you say that there's only knas from when she's 12. The Chum say there's a knas even when she's 3, and she could also be sold. She can be sold from day one. She could be sold as a maid. So we see that there's an overlap that there could be. So according to the Chachamim, our Mishnah, when that statement of our Mishnah, that when there's this applies, then that doesn't apply. That applies. This doesn't apply. That doesn't apply. That wouldn't fit with the Chachamim. It only fits with the Meir. Okay, the next Mishnah says, Kol makom sheish miyan ein chalitza, kol makom sheish chalitza ein miyan. Here you have just a small overlap. Miyun means that a young girl, if her father passed away and she gets sold into marriage by her brother or mother. So it's sort of a lower category marriage where she can walk out without a get. She can just say, I reject this husband, and she can just walk out. The marriage could be a marriage if she wants it to last, but she can also just walk out. It's called miyun. Miyun is like to reject. Like Bayiman, Liechtenstein, to reject. So, if she's young enough to walk out, then she's too young for chalitza. If she's old enough to do chalitza, then she's too old to do miyan. Then the marriage already requires a get. I'm Rabbi Yehuda Marav. See, another Rabbi Yehuda Marav. Zudiv Rab Meir. This is the opinion of Rab Meir. But the Chachamim say that there's an overlap. There's miyan even when there's chalitza. The Tanya was taught in Brayson Masei Abbas Menas Ad Shetavish Deisaris. When and how long can she do miyan? Until she becomes a naira, till there's 2 pubic hairs. He says no, you can do miyan until those hairs are increased. It looks more dark than white over there. Now it turns out that that's not how the Gemara learns it. The Gemara learns that just that area has there's 2 hairs that are long enough that the one end reaches the next one. Okay, whatever the case is, there's an overlap of after she's already a naira where she can still do miyan, and chalitza already started when she was a naira. So that little bit of an overlap means that the according to Chacham, you wouldn't be able to say that rule of our Mishnah. The next one is Kol makom sheish tkiya in Havdalah, Chol makom sheish Havdalah in tkiya. Before Shabbos, they have the siren, in Eretz Yisrael and Crown Heights, they have the siren. In olden days, that was the tkiya. They would blow the shofar. There were 6 of them. I think they would blow at different times of the day, right? There's 3 or 6 or whatever. But anyway, if it's Erev Shabbos, then you have the Tkiya. If it's after Shabbos, then you have Havdalah. So, if you ever have a Tkiya, then you don't have the Havdalah. If you have Havdalah, you don't have the Tkiya. We're going to see some details on this. Yom Tov Shchali is Erev Shabbos. Let's say Friday is Yom Tov. Taken blame of Dylan. You don't make Havdalah from Yom Tov to Shabbos, but you do make the Tkiya. Yeah, I was in Crown Heights for Shavuos, and the siren went off on Friday afternoon. The siren, yeah, it was on Yom Tov. In Eretz Yisrael, does the siren go off in Yerushalayim on Shavuos? You don't have 2 days, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it was Yom Tov on Friday, and it goes straight into Shabbos. Shabbos wasn't Yom Tov, and in Eretz Yisrael. But the reason for the siren would be, the reason for the tkiya would be, people have to realize that they can't do oichel nefesh. They have to stop certain types of malachas. Even though Yom Tov is Yom Tov, there's other halachas of Yom Tov, but there's certain things that they have to stop because it's about to be Shabbos. Right? There's differences. However, you don't do Havdalah. Maseches Shabbos, and Maseches Shabbos, Mabdil v'lei taken. You only do Havdalah, but you don't do a siren Maseches Shabbos. Ketzad Mabdilan. How do you do Havdalah? What do you do if after Shabbos it's Yom Tov. So you say Hamavda ben Kodesh l'Kodesh. Reb Doisa Eimer ben Kodesh Chamer l'Kodesh Hakal. Reb Doisa says you say Kodesh Chamer Hamavda ben Kodesh Chamer l'Kodesh Kal. Yeah, the Chum don't accept that. They say that's not that's embarrassing to the Yom Tov to say you're minor, you're moderately holy. So that's not doesn't sound good. Hechi Tekeya, how would they blow? Now, Rav Yehuda says, here again, Rav Yehuda, right after Mishnah, Tekeya Maria Mitech Tekeya. What they would do is they would blow one blast, and then it would go, they would go into a trua from the blast itself. Ravasi says, no, it wouldn't go, it would go, there would be a little pause without a breath. There would be, without breathing in the middle. But it was bin shimachas, as opposed to other days where there was a breath in the middle. So you would be able to tell the difference if it was coming from Yom Tov, if it was coming from a weekday. Asking Ravasi behutzel kishmaite. Ravasi instituted in Hutzel to do it like that you do it in one breath. Meisvei, the Gemara's a question, Yom Tov Shchal Yisberev Shabbos. If Yom Tov's on Friday, taken and they do a tkiya and they don't do a trua. You told me that they do a trua. My love, Lemiri Klal. It looks like they don't do a trua at all. Loi, Rav Yehuda mitartzat to me, Ravasi mitartzat to me. Rav Yehuda and Ravasi. We're going to explain this. How does it work? Rav Yehuda mitartzat to me, Lemiri b'fnei atzum l'teich tkiya. You don't do an independent trua, but you do a trua from a tkiya. You do it, it continues right in. Ravasi says, you don't do it in two breaths, you do it in one breath. Okay. Yeah, was there a siren on Shavuos? I can't hear. Okay. The Gemara concludes over here. It says, Maseches Shabbos, they don't do it tkiya, they only do Abdallah. Heicha Amala. When did they say Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'Kodesh or Hamavdil ben Kodesh Hakal l'Kodesh Kodesh Chamer l'Kodesh Hakal? I'm Rav Yehuda b'Chasi Masa. That's at the end of the Havdalah. Baruch Atah Hashem Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'Kodesh. Ken Rav Nachman b'Chasi Masa. Rav Sheshes Breder Rav Yidi Amar Achbes b'Psichasa. Rav Sheshes Breder Rav Yidi says also in the beginning Baruch Atah Hashem l'Kenem Melech Elam Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'Kodesh ben Yisrael. Right, he would say it at the beginning as well. But let's say we don't do it like that. Rav Doisa ben Kodesh Chamer l'Kodesh Hakal. Rav Doisa says you go from Kodesh Chamer l'Kodesh Hakal. We don't pass like Rav Doisa either. I'm Rav Zera. We explained why. Because it doesn't look right. Rav Zera says Yom Tov Shchalias Yom Tov Shabbos. Yom Tov is in the middle of the week. What are you going to say? How do you say who separates the seventh day? It's not the seventh day. Yom Tov was on a Monday, Tuesday, whatever. Nevertheless, you say how could you say that? It says my timer Seder Havdalah Sumayna. We're only saying that the term Havdalah as it is in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says Havdalah. Not in the Psukim. We have quotes in the Psukim regarding Havdalah, and all we're doing is we're referencing those Psukim. And so when we're going to say at the end, Amavda ben Kodesh l'chol, so we have something similar to that right before the bracha. The Eibishter divided between ben Gemesh Shvil Sheis Me'er Ma'aseh, and then we finish off Amavda ben Kodesh l'chol. Okay, Hadron Lacha Kol Sheikhtin. Okay, Shukayach everyone, and start a new parak tomorrow.
Thank you very much.